everybody. Welcome to Who Cares About the Rock Hall, a podcast about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm your host, Joe Quazala, and I know entirely too much about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. To some, that is embarrassing. With me, as always, someone who I think it is embarrassing to know me and to be a part of this, but she's along for the ride anyway. It's my co-host, the skeptic, the voice of the people, Kristen Sutter. Hi, Kristen.
Hello, Joe. Wow. Yeah. Embarrassing to some.
To you specifically. You're
Mostly
embarrassed for me.
I'm very embarrassed for us as a whole, as a podcast, as a community, but also I'm each day like inching closer and closer to some point of pride. I'm proud that I remember things now, but I'm also sad about it.
Well, I hope you're enjoying the bad pun theme month that we're in right now. We are in the second week of Doc-Gist, our celebration of the documentaries of this year's
Just
Rock and
rolls
Roll.
right off the tongue. Doc-Gist.
It has to be bad. You know the rules. But yeah, we are taking a look at the documentaries of the inductees this year because there were quite a few very recently. We did The Black Godfather last week, and this week, very excited to have two members of the team behind the Go-Go's documentary. First up, we've got the editor, continuing our streak of talking to the editors of these films. We've got Brett Banks. Hello, Brett.
Hello, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And Brett's not alone. He brought with him the director of the film, Allison Elwood. Hi, Allison.
Hey, so fun to be here.
Absolute get. Can't believe it. Wow.
Yeah, we're very excited to talk to you both. So I will pose the question that I pose to all of our guests up top. First thing, out of the gate, and we can start with you, Brett. What is your level of familiarity with this bizarre institution called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Well, like many, I think the Rock Hall is something I've heard of. I'm aware that it's there. I know it's a big deal, but I've never put too much stock in it. You know, I feel like for so long there have been a ton of overlooked artists who maybe don't have the sales on Billboard charts, that maybe aren't recognized by the Rock Hall. Same time, it's in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, so it puts Ohio on the map. So I like that about it.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good reasoned experience with the Rock Hall and feeling about it. Allison, what about you?
Kind of similar to Brett. I was aware of it and, would see certain, we've obviously worked on films that have artists that have been inducted. So I've worked with footage of it before. I've never followed it particularly so, but, it was funny with the Go-Go's because I was so sure that they were going to be inducted before we finished the film that we were going to have to take out the little stings at the end. And Brett and I were prepared to remove those. And when they didn't, we're just like, screw it. We're keeping them in.
Yeah. I mean, it has come up a lot on the show, but we think the documentary did a great service in terms of providing the momentum to get them on the ballot and then get them inducted.
I think it was a reminder.
Yeah, it feels like a reminder. It's a way to raise consciousness around a band. We often say, because during the non-ceremony season,
season.
In the off season, oh my gosh. In the off season, our show is about like bands who aren't inducted and if they will get in, why, how, and when, etc. And one of the things we often say, well, they could get in 5 to 10 years from now, unless someone makes a documentary about them next year, and then their chances go up because people are talking about them. It happened. We've seen it quite a few times in the past couple of years.
Yeah, so that it's interesting that you say that you were so sure they were going to get in, but it's almost like a failsafe on some level because it comes up in the movie.
Yeah, twice.
Well, yeah, she calls out Jan Wenner by name.
Yeah, Belinda does.
Belinda does, and calls out not being in the Rock Hall because of, them not being grateful enough for him saying that they put out on the cover of a magazine. And then, at the end, there's that whole stinger.
But funny about that, when we were at Sundance, the magazine officially belatedly apologized for saying that.
Who on behalf of who? Like, did they send you who
No,
said
it was printed in the magazine. Do you remember who wrote it, Brett?
No, but I think in Rolling Stone's review for the doc after we played at Sundance, yeah, someone just snuck in a little side note that like, whoops, turns out we got that one wrong, omitting. So yeah. So at least I actually never knew much about Rolling Stone's connection with the Rock Hall before getting into the Go-Go's. So
it's a strong one.
Yeah, I had heard of it because obviously about on our show and stuff, but I just listened to like the Jan Wenner biography, and I'm like a hall truther about how intertwined Rolling Stone and also just the institution of the record industry is so deeply just enmeshed in the decision making of who, especially in the formative years, like who gets in, who's worthy, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And is it true that you have to lobby?
It is and it isn't. We know of cases where very powerful people wanted an artist to get in and they didn't.
Yeah. If you could lobby your way in, like the Jay Giles band would be in.
Right. Foreigner would be in. There are very powerful people who, if they truly did have unilateral decision making, that those bands would be in, but they're not. But you do need someone in that room, in that nominating committee, to bring up the name. And if you know those people and you establish a connection with that person and you can convince them, I mean, I have tried to do it on behalf of bands I have no business dealings with, that I have no connection to, just because I think about this a lot and I'm insane. But we also know somebody whose management company paid for a flight to New York to the nominating committee so that he could nominate the band and they got in. So it's all over the spectrum. Sometimes it's just, they're an obvious choice, and sometimes it's an advocacy.
Well, we're an odd industry that feels compelled to award ourselves in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you can say it's a weird position to be in, because you can say like, well, it doesn't matter. The whole idea of the award is false on the very notion of it. But then you're like, well, it keeps happening. And yeah. And maybe we could work from within the system to try to push it in the right direction.
Yeah, Joe's a reformer and I'm an abolitionist. So
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I don't know if we've ever put it in those terms exactly, but I think that's accurate. I would love to know how this documentary started. Like, what was the genesis of the idea?
The band actually, they loved the Eagles film that I did, and they Thank you. And they felt it was honest, and they were really gun shy after their Behind the Music, the VH1 thing that really focused on the salacious.
Sorry, I forgot. I kept thinking when I was watching the movie today, and I apologize for interrupting, but like I kept being like, why do I know about how hard they partied? I'm like, I remember there being like a video of them wasted and trashed on tour. And I was just like, why do I, and you just saying that, I'm like, it's from their freaking Behind the Music. That is, yeah, it really was quite salacious. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
They were super gun shy, but when they saw the Eagles film, they said, okay, so I had phone meetings with them, personal meetings with them. And I finally just said, look, this is an issue of mutual trust. And I have to trust you as well, because I don't want to do the salacious thing. I'm interested in the music. I'm interested in the growth in the songs. I was a huge fan. I didn't know as much about their punk roots as Brett did, I think. And Brett, I've worked with on so many films, and he's one of my absolute number one go-to guys. And so I brought him in, and Brett, you tell your part of getting into this.
Actually, it's funny learning about the Go-Go's punk roots. That was what hooked me. But Allison gave me a call one day letting me know that she was going to direct a doc about the Go-Go's. And this was, at that point, all I really knew was Our Lips Are Sealed and We Got the Beat. So I quickly just wanted to, of course I said yes, but I quickly wanted to know, what else is there? And it didn't take long to find videos and photos of their early days before Jane knew how to play guitar, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And just seeing this band that so many of us know from, like, you know, watching highlights on MTV or something, and as this super, not quite bubblegummy, but a definite pop group, and seeing where they came from and being legitimate punks who crawled out of the same scene as, you know, as
The Germs.
The Germs and as the Plugs, and I mean so many like legitimate punk
Yes,
bands.
like punk cred punk. Like this
Yeah,
isn't
some
fooling
crusty
around.
bands were intense and hardcore.
Totally. And like early photos of Jane Weedlin, who is the sweetest and tiniest pixie of a person, seeing photos of her as a 17-year-old girl where she looks like she's ready to get in a fist fight with anybody who crosses her or something. Like that. Yeah, this is a band that there's so much of their story that I think Allison quickly wanted to untap and share with everyone. So,
and like there really is so much incredible footage from that time.
There was so much footage of even their very earliest stuff. What an amazing thing. And then also that their first manager was just like, I took pictures of everything all the time. And like, how amazing, you know, and to get all of the cooperation from all of those people is like pretty great.
Yeah, no, it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, was that difficult to find, or was it readily available once you talked to the right people?
I mean, it's out there. It took some digging,
Mm-hmm.
and it took, more importantly, toward the end when we needed to actually finish it and find better quality versions of some of the stuff.
Sure.
That's when Brett and I were literally pulling out our hair going, we can't use this. It's like, you know.
Yeah, right. Unwatchable. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, there's a lot of great stuff. You know, it's weird because I had just, you know, I was also simultaneously kind of finishing the Laurel Canyon series, and Laurel Canyon stuff had footage that was filmed that was shot earlier, but film holds up so much better than videotape, especially the early videotape.
Mm-hmm.
So the quality was ironically better 10 years earlier than it was in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like a microcosm of both those scenes. You know, one is like down and dirty, one is, you know, very, you know, up in the canyon, very clean.
Yeah.
And
but we kind of just went with that as a style. In fact, you know, we kind of used that kind of grittiness for, you know, for our titles and animation and stuff. We embraced it.
yeah, it absolutely works. The aesthetic comes across for sure. And I thought the choice to kind of begin the movie not dwelling on their childhoods, but focusing rather on the connection to punk when punk entered their lives felt super important.
Yeah. There was that moment of the spark.
I felt like the film spends more than half on the rise before they get famous, before they break, before it starts with, okay, we don't know how to play instruments. And then it goes up to, like, I feel like it's like, they don't even get their first record deal until over halfway through the movie. And so you're watching them grow and learn. We just did, you know, it's Darkest. It's better. I really like Darkest more than Fulai. I will say I'm enjoying it a lot more. I like the subject matter a lot more. But I think that one of the coolest things about it was I learned a lot that I didn't know. I had a surface level awareness of the band. I felt like it focused less on the salaciousness and more on the friendships. And there was drama, but like it wasn't a National Enquirer piece. Like, and the fact that they were all on board to agree to be interviewed, even the band members who had been fired and who, you know, and the manager who had been fired and all of that stuff. It's like the fact that they came back together at the end. I was like, that makes me feel nice.
Yeah. Was that ever at all an issue?
It was an issue for Margot and Alyssa. It took quite a bit of convincing.
I mean, I can imagine. That's Alyssa Bello, the original drummer, and Margot Olivaria, the original bass player, because, you know, both of them were kicked out of the band. And then there's Ginger, who was their manager from the very beginning and through a lot of their success, but was pushed out kind of at their peak.
Ginger was on board pretty much right away.
A lot of those relationships over time, as you learn, kind of were frayed and have gone through challenges. And Allison was huge part of bringing these people together. And there was a ton of work, where Ali and our producers were really working to get these women to be comfortable enough to be vulnerable enough to participate.
Well, I mean, if there's going to be a band that has had some bad blood, you've already done the Eagles documentary. And so,
yeah, it was just like a cakewalk after the Eagles documentary.
Sailing.
Good Lord. I mean, do you feel like you developed that skill? Maybe on the Eagles documentary, you have to talk to, you have to convince the most like famously fraught rock band. And now it's like, well, if I did the Eagles, I can do anything.
I always say that the Eagles was a film about male anger and the Go-Go's is a film about female pain.
Ooh, that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. And I got every Rock Hall connection. I have to point out Robert Hilburn, one of their early songs about a rock critic who was on the nominating committee for a very long time from the very beginning of the Rock Hall. But, I think by the time he heard that song, from what I understand, by the time he learned about it, because it was not obviously on an album, it was just an early messy song that they would scream. He was already on board with the Go-Go's and he thought oh, that's interesting. Did you consider talking to Bob Hilburn?
We did. Brett, do you remember? He said he wouldn't do an interview about it. He doesn't do interviews about that. On any of this anymore, I don't think. I don't remember exactly. We did reach out to him.
Yeah, I think we wanted his take on it because Robert Hilburn became one of our favorite Go-Go songs. I mean, yeah, that's why it made it in the film. That's why we wanted to, give it a beat to feature it. And it's one of those sequences where we throw the lyrics up.
Right. Yeah. It gets its moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely gets its moment.
Well, I will let you guys know that he will not talk to us either. So.
Yeah, I don't think he does interviews.
I think even though he has a radio show, I think he's a relatively shy man.
Yeah. In the end, he ended up liking them and he gave them good reviews. Right.
Yeah. So that's really the irony of it, I guess.
It was a mutual respect for two titans,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he was.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, he's one of the great rock critics of all time, I suppose. Great in the sense of, I guess, enormity at the very least. It's also, the movie to me almost felt a little bit like classically assembling a crew type movie. The way it is spaced out is so fun because it's okay, Belinda Carlisle is the singer, and then on drums is this woman Alyssa Bello, and then Margot Olivaria is on bass, and then Jane Wheatland is playing guitar, and none of them really know what they're doing, but they're punk. And then they bring in Charlotte Caffey, this classically trained musician, and she brings musicianship to the group. And then they get rid of Alyssa and they bring in Gina Shock, this incredible drummer from Baltimore who is really good and whips them into shape and has a work ethic. And then they get Ginger, this manager who really believes in them and has a vision for them. And then when it's not working with Margot, they find Kathy Valentine, who joins the group, and she fits perfectly as their new bass player. Then they sign at IRS Records. So Miles Copeland, who managed the Police and was Stuart Copeland's brother, and he has a vision for them as well. And so you kind of assemble the crew to make the Go-Go's what the Go-Go's are. And I thought that the pacing of it elevates in a way that it gives you that excitement that you get with a heist movie.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
No, that's amazing. I remember early on how great the shoots were with these women, but how individually unique each of them are. Mm-hmm. I think from the beginning, Ali, I think you were stressing each individual needs their due and needs their moment or their few moments. So yeah, assembling the squad. I mean, they're kind of like a superhero team in a way. They each have different powers. And I guess that's what makes every great band a great band.
I remember seeing them when I was a young kid and being look at these pretty women doing their thing. They're why did we make it? And it's oh, well, the songs are good and we're talented and all of that stuff. But it was also a very beautiful package that they wound up in a way.
Yeah, but they had to fight hard for that package. That wasn't a sellable package at the time they were trying to sell it, and they got rejected. they just kept working really hard. And obviously, Miles came in and saw them and believed in them and was willing to take a chance where others weren't, because no one had done what they were doing before them. They were the first. They were the only first all-girl band to write their own songs and play their own instruments and to be put together by themselves. They weren't Svengali.
I know Miles has a great line when he talks about signing them. And, he's like, they're from LA, they're punks, and they're all girls. Like, it was perfect. And I think it took someone with a sort of outsider mentality like Miles Copeland to take that first step that I think probably pop culture later, pretty quickly hopped on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that quote that you said that I like, that you forgot to mention, was, it doesn't even matter if they're good. They happen to be good. But
Very true.
there's all these, which I love that. There's all these elements that are so interesting, like, fuck, like they don't have to be good. Already we just have something that you kind of want to see play out, but then they also happen to be great and have great songs.
Well, and I think what's fascinating about that, to him, he's like, it's obvious this is a slam dunk. And then also they're very good at writing songs and playing music and stuff. But, label after label after label before that had seen that exact same thing and been like, yeah, no, that's not a winning combination. And he was like, it's such an obviously winning combination. And we now, I think, have retconned that into our subconscious. We're like, yeah, a girl band. Now it just seems so clear that it would be such a success, because we know it was.
I just want to point out that maybe the greatest accent in all of documentaries is Gina Shock's Baltimore accent. Like, it is... not what you, at least not what I was expecting, especially from what you consider to be an LA punk band. That was a real, I'll say it was a shock. Apologies.
Nice.
But it really, I'm from Pittsburgh, so that mid-Atlantic area, I am very familiar with that type of accent. And I got to say, I never got tired of hearing Gina Shock be like, we got practice.
It's not an accent that I think most mortals can even get close to imitate. Like, if you're not from Baltimore, you can't even touch that thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really excellent. I really like the way that, especially for the pivotal song creation, the way that the film gets you into that songwriting mindset. Like, we get that with Charlotte describing how We Got the Beat came to her almost like as divine intervention while she's watching
like a fugue state. Yeah.
And then also later when we get, I think the story of Our Lips Are Sealed is a really interesting one, where they were touring with the Specials overseas. And then, Jane Weedland develops a little bit of a romance with Terry from the Specials. And after the tour, he sends her some lyrics, which she really connects to, and then builds upon that. And it becomes Our Lips Are Sealed, one of their biggest songs. And
he did the song too, which is interesting. And at one point we had his version in, and it was fun to hear the difference of them. It doesn't matter what they say. No one listens
anyway. What was his band called that played their version of Our Lips Are Sealed? I always forget. It was like the Fun Boys.
Fun Boys. Fun Boys.
The Fun Boy 3.
Fun Boy 3, yeah.
The Fun Boy 3.
The Fun Boy 3?
I think it's just Fun Boy 3.
Fun Boy 3. Okay, good. I'm like, that shouldn't have a the in it. When I was watching that, she was just like, he sent me the lyrics and I started with those. And then I, made kind of like wrote the song or whatever. And I was like, gosh, how does he feel about that or whatever? And then I saw later on, there's a whole bunch about who's getting credit for writing what song. And then I see Our Lips Are Sealed. And then she gets a songwriting credit. And then he also had gotten songwriting credit on that song as well. I'm like, question answered.
Well, I also love the way the animation helps tell those stories. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really fun. We wanted to go with something very 80s neon bright, but a little punk and edgy, and everybody gets their moment with that, which is great.
Yeah, and also listening or hearing the passion that the members of the Specials and Madness still have for the Go-Go's is really, really infectious.
Yeah.
I thought it was super cool that there's so many like really excellent, perfect sound bites that people just give where, you know, they're like, great, so we're going to start a band. There's just one problem. Like, we can't play any instruments or whatever, you know, it's like they really like they do the setup and the punchline, you know, and that thing about how they went over, had this really hard, rough time in the UK. And then they come back to the US and everyone's like, you're stars in the UK. Wow. Congrats. Then they start taking off here.
Well, what they said is that they hadn't really launched in the UK. It was horrible for them
right
there. But because they had the stiff single and they came back, people thought they'd launched, and they say at one point we weren't going to tell them otherwise.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, why just let them go with it and
let them go with it.
Ride the wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there, I mean, the movie does not have any footage from the UK tour, does it?
Well, we pretend we do.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some photos. There's some photos of the UK tour. Yeah, but no one was shooting during that. But yeah, we do we weave in a few early performances to kind of impressionistic put you there.
Yeah, if it's not literally the UK tour, it gives you the vibe.
Yeah, we searched for that, and you know, somewhere I'm sure something exists, but we weren't able to come across it, which is too bad. But, you know, I think between the stills and some of the earlier stuff, you know, you get the sense of what it was like for them there. But the thing is that they really, because it was they were under such duress and being spit at and bottles thrown at them and screamed at, that they actually, you know, their attitude was like, well, we're going to get better and fuck you. And they did. They got tight. Mm-hmm. So by the time they got back to LA, not only did people think that they had become stars, they really had, because they'd figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice when that works out.
I guess it's a good lesson about the value of being spat upon by audiences nightly. I don't know.
Forged in the fire, hardened like cast iron. I think too, also like seeing LA in the 80s as someone who lives in Los Angeles right now was like really so fun and wild to think about Hollywood being a cool, crusty place where punks go. I'm like, Hollywood is where tourists go, you know, where that club is and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that is not like a cool
would never go there to find anything interesting.
Yeah, to find anything like interesting or like the next big thing is not going to be coming out of Hollywood Boulevard in that area. There was like that moment in the film where I really just was like, oh, wow. It's like when you see We Got the Beat video, I think it is, or yeah, it's the one where they're in the convertible.
It's Our Lips Are Sealed.
They're in the convertible and it's just, oh, wow. They look so sunny. Everything had been all this club footage and things like that. And you see that the way that the public met them though was sunny California girls driving around in a convertible.
And I love the story that they were so mad about having to do that video. There were a lot of funny things that we had to leave
trying to get arrested.
Well, trying to get arrested, but also that they just so didn't want to do it. They're like, this is stupid. What's MTV? We don't want to do this. And but we'll at least get arrested. And then that didn't happen. And
it's a rough day for them. I mean, one of the coolest parts of their story to me was how the producer of Beauty and the Beat, Richard Goddard, who is this minor titan of pop music songwriting. I believe he wrote the song I Want Candy. He goes back to things like that. He produced girl groups. I think he did a Shirelles album. But somehow he was the one producing Beauty and the Beat. And I love when Gina Shock, the drummer, mentions that, you know, they're in the studio, they're trying to work out the kinks. And Richard Goddard instructed them to just lower the tempo of every single song.
Slow it down.
And so it's sort of like it turns punk music into pop music when you do that. And that's another part of the, like you said, with the Our Lips Are Sealed video and the Sunshine and the convertible, that plus a seasoned pop producer, this is kind of what happens. It's really interesting.
And they hated the album when they first heard it. They hated it.
Right.
Because they said it doesn't sound like us. We don't sound punk anymore. They were really angry. And then suddenly it starts getting all this airplay. Right.
Right. Yeah. Because I got to imagine there's some degree of you feel like you sold out and like the scene you came out of is no longer going to accept you. And
they didn't. There was backlash.
Yeah. Why don't we take a quick break? And then when we come back, we'll have more to talk about with the director and editor of the Go-Go's documentary. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We hope you had a nice break. We hope over your break you learned a fun fact. We learned a fun fact.
And also that you gave someone a nice compliment.
Yeah, for sure. Fun fact we learned over the break. So there's a part in the movie where Kathy Valentine has to sub in. She's not the bass player yet. She's subbing in for Margot, the original bass player who is sick, and she has to learn all the Go-Go songs on the bass, an instrument she does not really know how to play, and she does it in like a 3-day Coke binge, super, super focused, like trying to figure out. And you hear that in the movie. You hear, what is in quotes her learning those bass lines. The person actually playing the bass, why? It's Brett Banks.
An editor with many talents.
I feel heard. Yeah, I guess the way that scene came together, obviously Kathy tells the story beautifully about how she decides to go on a 3-day Coke bender after lying about her skills on the bass. But yeah, I guess while editing the scene, I was just kind of reaching for a little soundtrack that would sound human. And so I picked up my bass, and it's one of the benefits of being a musician when you work on a music doc. You can really like crawl into the skin of these characters in a way and play what they play. So yeah, the 3-day Coke bender didn't happen for me. I maybe had I had like a beer and a whiskey, tried to get loose, tried to play slow. But yeah, that was one of the fun little nuggets in the movie.
Yeah, I remember. I was like, oh wow, they have incredible archival material.
Well, it does kind of morph into instrumental splits of some of their songs that we were luckily able to get our hands on. And like those were so much fun to play with.
Like, do you mean you had like the actual stems from the track? Okay.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So we were able to, hear everyone's individual playing and kind of make it feel like you're hearing their voice here and there with that as well. So
that is so cool.
Yeah. I
feel like when I was watching this, I was like, Kathy Valentine has been to therapy and it shows. I was like,
she's a wisdom.
We just love a person who can be like, we did not have the tools that we needed. We did not have the emotional capacity to be the people that we needed to be for each other at that time. And I recognized that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a person who has healed. This is someone who has worked through their trauma. It was like very cool to hear someone just so accurately be like, we were young and we could not support each other in the ways that we needed at times. We were ignoring big problems that other people were having because we were having our own problems. And I was like, all right, Kathy.
That one moment during the talk show recording where she sums up everybody's issue, like boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. And then she goes, and I was part of it too. It's like, yep. It was amazingly insightful. They're all amazingly insightful. They're all, the most fun thing for me was just how incredibly smart and funny they are. And their banter together is very real. And I'm so glad Brett got to experience a bit of it at Sundance because it's just rapid fire. They're comedians. They really are.
There are so many cute, endearing, real moments between them. And the whole like clown family thing, I think is like one of the cutest things I've ever seen. And
right. And that occurs at a time, if I'm not mistaken, where, they're having trouble with each other, but they still manage to just do this goofy thing where they put on clown noses and take pictures where they're pretending to birth Jane Wheatland. That doesn't come from a group that doesn't have fun and doesn't, I think, fundamentally love each other also.
And that ultimately is what comes out, I think, is that, they're like sisters. They really are. And, I've got 3 sisters and we fight, but we also love each other dearly, and we come back around and they've come back around multiple times, thankfully.
Yeah, I would say the core 5 really have a good perspective on the things that went down that were ugly. The things happen like it's decided the group is over and not everyone has a say in it, or Jane Weedland wants to express herself by singing lead on a song and nobody backs her up, and stuff that at the time, and you could understand if someone still held a grudge, but they all seem to have a good and healthy perspective on it while still acknowledging the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't minimize or sweep it under the rug what happened, but they all seem to have processed it. And I think too, Jane being so candid about her depression and, you know, suicidal ideation and stuff, and just saying like, it has always been very hard for me. And I think so many people would try to minimize that. I think she did everybody a service by being so vulnerable about that.
Yeah, I mean, she wanted the film to be the coming out of her being bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and she told me when we did that interview, she said, don't tell any of the other band members I said that. And I'm like, whoa, that's going to
wow.
be.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you all watch it together at Sundance, or had they seen it prior
we watched
to then,
it together at Sundance. We had sent them at the exact same time. We sent all of them the link. And they watched it in varying orders. Belinda, I think, let it sit on her computer for 2 or 3 days before she had the courage to watch it. Mm. So I was a nervous wreck.
Yeah. Now, when was the Sundance screening? Did you guys get in under the wire before the pandemic?
Yes.
Like kind of right?
We were like the last event
2020
before the pandemic.
Wow.
Right. Because my recollection is I remember when it came out for public viewing, and it was locked
later,
down.
Yeah, we were January.
Man, that's really special that you guys got to have that.
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, whenever Allison and I would chat, we would often measure time based on like pre-Sundance or post-Sundance, almost to like try to talk about something positive that isn't COVID. So no, that was the last gasp of the old world. Yeah.
Truly.
Wow.
And the sad thing about COVID though, is that, you know, the hope had been to release the film theatrically, tied into their concert tours that they had lined up for that summer, that it would hit these cities. And I think it could have been an incredibly huge summer blockbuster movie. And we just didn't have that opportunity. I mean, we're lucky we got to see it with an audience a few times at Sundance, which was spectacular. I mean, the audience just went nuts. And especially when they would do their Q&A, because like I said, they are very, very funny.
Well, you know, I guess silver lining, and you guys maybe have thought of this, but when that movie came out was at a time when the country, if not the world, was starving for stuff. And everybody was watching, trying to get their hands on anything interesting to watch. And I think that got some eyes. I would like to think that got some eyes to it who maybe wouldn't have seen it if that was not going on.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, you know, look, why not spend an hour and a half watching beautiful people make fun music and tell great stories and great antics? Yeah.
I have a very specific question about the moment when they ditch Ginger, their original manager, and they go to a bigger management firm that is not named in the film. Now, if you do a little bit of research, you can figure out what the management is. And there to me was a little bit more of a story there. May I discuss freely, and potentially can we talk about why that's not in the movie, or should I cut all this out?
You can say whatever you want. I might be quiet about it.
Okay. So if you like look up old, I believe this is in an old Rolling Stone article, might be somewhere else. The Go-Go's were enticed to go to frontline management specifically to be repped by Irving Azoff.
Oh boy.
Who at that point, and as Allison knows better than anyone else, had made the Eagles the biggest thing. And he was, you know, one of the most powerful, even at that time, you know, one of the most powerful managers. And, you know, he was inducted into the Rock Hall last year.
He's an asshole, but he's our asshole.
As Don Henley likes to say. Now, they were lured.
I didn't know it was him. This is information for me. They were lured
to his management firm, but right as they were like almost signing the papers, he left to go run MCA Records. And so to me, that I thought was an interesting storyline of like, we're going to be rep by this guy, signing on the dotted line. Oh shit, he's gone. Now, none of that is in the movie for reasons potentially.
That is true. That is what happens. I mean, I work with Irving, and you know, I have a relationship with him and other things. And there were some actually very funny things that Gina said about him that I think that Irving would have gotten a kick out of. But at the end of the day, it wasn't about Irving. It was about Ginger. That's why we didn't put it in.
Okay.
It didn't matter who it was with. It was a suit. She got replaced by a suit, and that's what was hurtful to her.
And maybe that is a more powerful way to tell that is, you know,
And I just love Ginger. I mean, I was just enamored by her from the minute that she just like comes on the scene. And then the fact that she's really candid about her hurt from that situation, and hearing Jane basically say, we made a huge mistake. We should have stuck with the person who really knew and believed in us, or like who understood us. Gosh, I really was feeling for her. And now that I know it was Irving Azoff, interesting.
But again, it doesn't really matter because he left. It's just, it
could have been anyone filling that suit. And, you know, the point is no one could do it like Ginger. No one really was like, you know, Mother Goose to the Go-Go's in the way that Ginger was. And she really did. She saw them as her little flock.
Well, and I mean, you know, she pawned a bunch of her stuff to send them on their first tour. I mean, she was
invested
sweat, tears,
in many ways, on many levels. Yeah.
But the good news is that they've all been in communication since the film. And I think that there's been some mending. And certainly within the band, for me, the most moving thing at Sundance was how many of the members came up to me and said, we're actually talking together about these things that we hadn't talked about for 40 years.
Wow.
And there's healing that happens as a result of that. And frankly, the same thing happened in the Eagles film. Bernie Ledden went back to play with the Eagles before Glenn died. And time can heal. And these are people that have these incredibly volatile, but incredibly close relationships that they form in the process of making this beautiful art together. And at some point, that's what comes through. And that, to me, that's the most important thing, that there's the healing that happens.
And, you know, at a certain point, like, and they say that in the film, it's like, who else literally knows what we went through except us? There are, you know, 4 other people on this planet who were there. At the end of the day, that's worth something to have people who truly were there when it all happened.
Kristen, I kind of can't believe I'm going to be the one to bring this up, but speaking of Ginger, there's a lot of great wardrobe in this movie.
Okay.
Like, people are looking great, and like Ginger, I like what Ginger's wearing, but I think top of the list is Kathleen Hanna.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. You know that I adore her.
I hand ironed that.
Whoa.
On set, and the producer was freaking out. I never let a director iron on set. I'm like, I know how to iron. I'm going to iron it. It was all wrinkled. I had to iron it for her.
I love that.
It paid off because I was like, that is, she's looking sharp. She's looking great.
Yeah, that was a great shirt. Well, and I love her. And I think that the thing that we talk about on the show, and I've talked about a lot, is just like how important representation is. They really showed people that you can be a successful all-woman band. That's like irreplaceable. Like, you cannot overstate how important that is, and how many people went on to start bands. Now, the part that is so hard and sad and tragic, in my opinion, is that, you know, we haven't had that level of success from an all-girl band since then. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is like really tragic. But I also think too, this documentary too, and them getting, wow, I'm about to say something good about the Rock Hall. I'm about to say something good about the Rock Hall. It's not my style.
Listeners, be prepared to clip this out of the show and spread it widely. Go ahead,
exactly. Kristen. It is going to come back to haunt me, but like, that is what I think can be good about the Rock Hall, is that it's elevating the profile of this band, that maybe people didn't realize just how revolutionary it was, what was happening with them. And maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, it will inspire more young people, more young women to be in bands and to start bands and to not give up and to know that it can happen, that it doesn't have to be a male industry solely. That is one thing that is good about these annual inductions, is that it's raising the profile often of very worthy artists, some more than others.
And some who could use it more than others too.
Exactly. And that was one of kind of when we were campaigning for certain people this year, it was a lot about that.
Yeah. And to explain what Kristen means, we got on the phones with voters this year. Would you call it canvassing? Would you call it, were we electioneering? What were we doing exactly?
Lobbying, we were canvassing. We had, people had their ballot. We were polling as well, but we were also
getting out the vote.
Strong arming. Yeah, we were doing GOTV. That's what we were doing. I wouldn't strong arming.
And the Go-Go's were at the top of the list for us. It was absolutely at the top of the list for us. But the truth is, we did not have to convince too many people because they were already. They would, that was already a check in the ballot box that they were already making.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're being inducted is, sure, the film was helpful just in reminding people, but they deserve it. They've deserved it for a long time. And, and I'm glad that there's a lot of attention this year being paid to a lot of great women being inducted too. And that's women have often been overlooked in general.
Yeah, and nowhere more than LOL. Many places more than.
Yeah, there are plenty of places, sadly.
Including and especially on even just the number of nominees, it's often that you couldn't even vote for many women even if you wanted to. There weren't even available to you on the ballot. I think it's really great to imagine young women seeing that and thinking, oh, that could be me. That looks cool. That looks fun. I think oftentimes you hear about bands or women in rock music and they're talking about their relation to men. They were someone's girlfriend or they were trying to impress someone, et cetera, et cetera. It was like these women wanted to be a part of this scene and they wanted to do it with other women.
It's interesting that you bring that up because other than Jane and Terry and Jane and Gina, we really don't bring up relationships in the film. And we did that intentionally because they were focused on their music and they had things going on, but that wasn't what was important for their story.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jane and Gina, was that something that the documentary exposed? Was that something that people knew about, that there was a time where Jane Wiedlin and Gina Schock were having a relationship?
I don't think most people knew about it. I knew about it. Brett knew about it. Certainly a lot of people did, but I think the general public, I think that was news. And Gina went there. I didn't force her at all. She just went there.
And she has a very funny attitude about it. There's that moment where she's like, and then she dumped me and it seems like it's going to be serious. And then she breaks out into laughter.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. To what you guys were saying about how it seems like all the members have processed the toughest parts of things and, that they've talked through it and they're comfortable with everything that happened. Like, I think for Gina and Jane, that moment was such a small thing. And I think Gina was excited to just laugh.
Yeah.
And Jane was happy that she brought it up because Jane didn't bring it up at all. I interviewed Jane before Gina.
Just kind of speaking of stuff that maybe we didn't see footage of, they talk about the SNL performance.
Oh, that's got to be expensive, right? That was my.
The NBC vault, the archive is just too much.
You know what? It's not just money. It's that because they truly are messed up in that. But in order for you to really see it, you have to play almost the whole thing for it to come across. And Gina, in her genius, was taking pictures of everything. She captured the moments of how fucked up they were on single frames. So we just use 30 seconds of it and get boom, 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 get out. And it was better told that way, honestly.
I mean, just what a gold mine all of her photos were. Wow. How amazing.
Chaos in her house in San Francisco. She's like, oh, there's some shit in that drawer. We pull it out and there'd be like 1,000 Polaroids. You pull up another drawer. So I was trying to organize it for her. It was nuts. But I did organize it for her. I hope she didn't throw it all back in boxes.
That was very nice of you.
Wow.
I want to give a shout out to Paula Jean Brown.
Oh, yeah.
a late addition to both the movie and the group. She steps in when Jane Wiedlin leaves, and she's not with the band for very long, but her presence and what she does is so important. I mean, she saves Charlotte's life.
Yeah.
And that was such a powerful moment. And I thought it was interesting that it took an outsider to step in and see the problem immediately and got her the help she needed.
Yeah.
I'd say especially to Paula's credit, she had never played a gig like Rock in Rio. Like she had been only in really like obscure, unknown bands. And so amidst all the excitement I'm sure she felt, the fact that she was brave enough to say to this new person, Charlotte, who she was really indebted to for the opportunity, but just telling her about how she needed help. Yeah, no, Paula's a brave person for sure.
Yeah.
And then she writes Mad About You. I mean, come on.
That was one of the things that I thought was so interesting about the movie and it's so interesting about the band. It is so uncommon for so many people in a band to all be gifted songwriters.
Yeah.
You've 3 great songwriters, and it's just really a lot of incredible talent. I think that the movie talks about it and stuff too, about the value that we place on songwriting versus performance, and kind of like how much more money you can make if you are a songwriter. And we just were talking about the Black Godfather last week, but one of the big things that he was always telling to his clients and to anyone that he was advising was, you have to own your masters and you have to own the publishing rights. Like, those are things that you absolutely have to do. Absolute props forever and ever to Ginger for knowing that, saving them from getting that terrible first record deal that so often is what happens to bands. We've just seen that story over and over again. Their debut album is their biggest selling best of all time, and they made $20 off it because they got a terrible deal because they were so excited to sign something.
It's a tricky thing, but I do think that the bands that have had a lot of longevity are ones, like U2 and REM that just say, we share everything across the board.
Right.
And don't delineate that way, because everyone does contribute. There are 2 sides to the story, and I get it. But
I was very disappointed when Jane left. I was watching the movie. I knew she leaves, but I'm watching. I'm like, don't leave. For what? For this? It's not what, don't do it, come on. And then also just seeing how much it hurt Gina and Kathy, and it's hard to be just a drummer out there. A drummer rarely is the focus point of a band. A few major exceptions, but it's
a thankless job.
Yeah. It's also one of those things where if you're not a songwriter too, and she's like, I'm not a trained musician and I'm not she went on to be a songwriter, but it was she's like, I love the band. I want to stay in the band. And it's so, that was so hard I was like, Jane, don't go. Why'd you do it? But she wanted the respect. I get it. She
had
wanted
principles and stuck to her guns, and you have to respect that.
I guess. Come on.
The other thing you have to remember is above everything, it was the 80s. There was a lot of drugs going on, and it doesn't help people's perspective on things.
Yeah.
Right.
Tale as old as time, but a true story. And that's why we keep telling it. But it's money ruins everything. That's when the fun stops. The money comes in, and then now everybody's miserable. They're playing the biggest stadiums of their lives. Their dream is coming true, and they've never been less happy. And I was just like, give them a break. Let's give them a vacation over here.
That's all they ever wanted.
Yeah, vacation. I did hear that it was all they ever wanted.
They all say the early years were the happiest times, the most fun, the most exciting, the ones they look back with the fondest memories.
Mm-hmm.
But that's true of life, and that's why I think these things transcend just people who are into music per se. They're human stories.
Mm-hmm.
We all have this inflated idea of what our dream is, and then we look back and we go, oh shit, getting there was actually the better part.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the better part worrying about getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because, once you have something, now it's like you could lose it. That's why I don't ever plan to be successful. I just keep journeying.
There you go. Keep saying that. So yeah, we obviously see after Jane leaves, that's kind of the beginning of the end, and the band eventually breaks up, and we get some flashes of what they do after the band is gone. I don't know if this is my top Easter egg, but you see a photo of the band House of Shock. And one of the members of House of Shock is a guy named Vance DeGeneres, who had a comedy career and is Ellen DeGeneres' brother.
What? I was about...
And it's a fleeting moment. It's only truly for comedy nerds. You're like, Vance DeGeneres was a correspondent on The Daily Show for a little bit and is Ellen's brother. But you see it in a promo photo for Gina's post Go-Go's band.
So, Joe, did you just recognize Vance from the photo? You know Vance that well? Is that right?
It has all their names.
Oh, it has the names.
It's written underneath.
Yeah, and I would not have recognized an old picture of Vance DeGeneres from his face alone, but no, it was the name.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
To me, that's also one of the Easter eggs where I want to point and yell it out, and everyone's like, well, what are you talking about?
We had at one point a bit of them talking. Did we cut that out? I can't remember.
Vance?
Yeah, Vance is not talking. As far as I recall.
Vance and Gina had a little bit in there at one point, but we had to cut it, I guess. So.
Yeah, Joe, I think I had the same reaction. It must have been when I looked at the photo and I Googled Vance DeGeneres just in case. There can't be that many DeGenereses. And I think I called Allison because I was so blown away with it. And it just sort of, there it is, Vance. Yeah.
Well, here's another Easter egg. Vance DeGeneres' wife, Joanna, is a headshot photographer. And she took my headshots in Chicago.
Whoa!
10 years ago.
Wow.
Incredible.
Because I was like, wait, Ellen has a brother too, because I knew that Joanna DeGeneres was in some way related to Ellen. But now I just Googled it and realized that no, she's Ellen's sister-in-law. Mm. And she is married to Vance, who was apparently on The Daily Show and
in House of Shock.
House of Shock.
Most importantly.
House of Shock.
So yeah, we see, what happens after the Go-Go's, and we see the rebirth of the Go-Go's. They come back and the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the Broadway musical, and we see them playing together, back together, performing music for the first time in a while.
And everybody's wearing glasses, looking at their music. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I want to see more things like that. I want to see more women in their middle ages rocking,
kick-ass,
living, being alive, looking like human beings.
Our culture tends to not show that, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I
had a question.
Loved it.
Gina loses the beat because she grabs a coffee or whatever happens when they're rehearsing, and then she says, it doesn't hurt to rehearse, it only makes you tighter, which we had heard early on in the movie. Did you just use that clip in the beginning, or is that something she literally has been saying is that a phrase of hers that she's been saying for 40 years?
Both are true.
Okay.
It's one of history's mysteries, guys.
Yeah. Fair enough. Because at that time in the movie, it's the introduction of Gina, and she's a workhorse and she whips everybody into shape, and you hear that phrase and you think oh, maybe this is just they were recording something and it's was recorded to tape. But then you hear it the exact same phrasing later, and that was my
well, we tried to treat it so it sounded like it was archived earlier.
Right. And you did. It certainly fooled me.
Absolutely. We're learning. The Easter eggs are all coming out. We're finding them. So
the movie ends on Rock and Roll Hall of Fame talk. It does. The final moments before the credits, there's some stuff mid-roll, but it's not them talking about it. It's, Chris Connolly and Miles Copeland and Kathleen Hanna. The decision to make that the final moment is that, well, if anything it would help. Is that the thinking?
From my perspective, I was so pissed that they weren't inducted the year that we were going to take all that shit out. And I said, fuck it, we're keeping it in. And I was fully prepared for the band to say, maybe we shouldn't do it. And they're like, oh yeah, fuck it, we'll leave it in. So it just, they all say they don't care, but they do. And I care for them. And it was funny.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a note that I do think ending on it and the acknowledgement of it, let alone the whole documentary, like I said, I think it's that momentum that was built. I do think it played a part in their induction. And so I thank you. But like genuinely, I mean, like what a great culmination, what a year for them. And can we talk about your involvement with the induction ceremony?
I'm cutting their videotape for the induction. So
the package, which is
one of our favorite parts of the ceremony.
Always the
I love it.
These induction ceremonies, these packages are so much fun, and I think I'm so glad that you're doing it because you have the qualifications to do so. Yeah,
well, we're using a lot of the film. I'm just trying to show their progression. It's going to be fun.
How long is the package, Allison? What's the run?
8 minutes.
Okay. Just personally thinking about this, like we spent a good year plus of our lives putting together a 90-minute telling of their story, and now you have to put it into 8. I do not envy you, but you're a bold, wonderful wizard. So
does it have to get shorter still? Because usually last year was different because it was like a pandemic special. It was almost like a documentary. So some of these packages were like 15, 20 minutes long.
Yeah,
they're saying 8 this year.
They're saying 8? Okay, interesting. Because that's like kind of in the middle from last year.
It could shift one way or the other a little bit, I think. But it'll be okay. It's just, there's so much good stuff. It's like, an embarrassment of riches.
I mean, it's going to be better than okay. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. One thing I know, it's like to shave off so many crucial, important things to make that small time frame. But one of the things I do think that is genuinely cool about it being a little bit shorter is like it punches you, like the impact, it hits you. And that's always a fun and exciting thing about those packages is that you get a lot very quickly.
Yeah,
you get like amped up.
Yeah, it's a real rush. Even bands that you don't like or think that you care about at all, by the end of a good little mini doc, you're like, oh fist. My gosh, I do. They should be in the Rock Hall. I care about the Doobie Brothers, I guess. How did this happen to me?
Allison, have you been talking to the band at all about their induction?
Not recently. I haven't spoken with them in a little while, but I probably will again soon. I haven't told them I'm doing the film for them.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. Wow. Once again, who cares about the Rock Halls? Got the scoop, baby.
They're going to call me and say, all right, the bit you cut out about this, I want that in.
Right. Yeah. They should not know because,
exactly. Yeah. Send it to them when it's done. Look, the highlight of the highlight reel.
Let them see it at the induction. That's the move.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't know if either of you guys know this, but it is, at least publicly, a question mark if Belinda Carlisle is going to be in attendance.
Oh, because coming from Thailand?
She has a UK tour that was booked a while ago with some conflicting dates, and the date of the ceremony is one of them.
She'll be there. I'm not saying that knowing.
You don't know, but you have.
Yeah. I'm sure she'll be there.
We feel similarly.
She'll make it happen. She's just causing drama.
I mean, hey, stir it up, Belinda.
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, that's what Kathy was saying. She's like, and we gave Belinda a hard time for being a diva.
I mean, on the record, we love Belinda. And I say like, hey, Belinda, maybe squeeze some dollars out of the Rock Hall to help you reorient your tour and cancel those dates. And, play it smartly, but also show up. Because this is my other question. With the Rock Hall induction, would you consider an addendum to the movie?
Interesting. I don't know. I feel like if they wanted to do it, I would, totally support them doing it. I'm not sure I would do it.
Mm-hmm. Just because I'm thinking it ends on that note of like, why aren't they in? I don't know. See how it looks after the induction, sneaking in,
maybe that would be okay. Just sneak something in at the end, like a joke.
Roll it in over credits.
Yeah, exactly. Put it mid-roll or something, and
yeah, that'd be fine.
Get because it would give you that satisfaction.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting idea.
Joe's out here changing hearts and minds.
That means Allison loves it. That's her way of saying dynamite.
Thank you for the translation, Brett.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, before we wrap up, is there anything about this movie, whether it is like stuff that you wish that you could have included but had to leave on the cutting room floor, or anything about the process that we haven't covered that you would like to share, either of you?
I mean, the sad thing for me was not including their road manager, Bruce Patron, who died last year, not of COVID, but of something else. And he was so funny, and there were so many great scenes, but at some point the film was almost too funny, and we had to balance so we ended up having to cut him out of the film. And we told him before we were going to play in Tribeca, which of course didn't happen. And he was very supportive, and then he passed away, and that was very sad.
I'm so sorry.
I'm trying to sneak a little bit of him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame package.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. I think it's a very nice gesture.
Yeah. And also will be something to look out for.
Yeah.
Brett, what about you? Anything that you remember reviewing that you felt bad that had to be left out?
Interestingly, like when you're working on these things, I think working with Allison, like we focus so much on like boiling things down to the most essential version of the story as much as we could. So it's not like any huge plot points or stories stick out. I know at one point I was arguing to like put a lot more sort of 80s pop culture flavor in the movie.
Okay.
Including like intros from 80s shows or something. Like TV appearances, maybe they did.
Ouija board, Brett. Ouija board. You wanted the Ouija board.
What?
Well,
what?
Okay.
Ouija board, Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Was there like a Rubik's Cube spins across, wipes the screen?
Great Ouija board story. Tell it.
No, that was all goofy stuff. But no, Allison is right. We did go back and forth a lot on a Ouija board scene where Belinda and Pleasant Gaiman, who is in the film, they speak about their time in Disgraceland. Is that right, Allison?
Yep.
I feel like you're going to kill this story much better than I would. Because
they do the Ouija board thing, and they say they ask a question, and that says, "This room is dirty," and then there was something else that happened. I don't remember. It was like some crazy thing, but it was a really funny scene. But it took like a minute, and it was like.
Am I remembering correctly? Didn't the Ouija board call them sluts? Is that right?
That's right. The punchline was the Ouija board called them sluts. That's right.
Yeah.
A fun moment. Maybe doesn't move the story along, but.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see if it makes it into the Rock Hall package.
Fingers crossed.
People will be like, who is Pleasant Gaiman?
She'll make it into that package.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to join us on the show. This was really great. And it's exciting to know that there's more coming from you, Allison, at the Rock Hall. So that's really exciting. Of course, the documentary is just called The Go-Go's, which is to the point, and I love it. Allison and Brett, thank you so much. Is there anything you would like to plug before we wrap up? Anything that's out or you're working on to look forward to?
Not at the moment. I've stuff in the works.
Okay. All right.
Top secret projects. But the one plug I would say is everyone should make sure they listen front to back to the Go-Go's Beauty and the Beat album. I think it's so accessible, and it's like head to toe. It is such a good album. So many great songs.
Agreed. There will be songs on there that you will go, how is this not a hit song? How do I not already know this? This is my new favorite song.
Oh yeah, it's deep.
I felt that about a lot of the songs that were like playing in the movie. I was like, oh, this is a great song. Yes, even times when they were like, and then we don't like this album, or like we were having a really hard time. I'm like, and yet the songs. I will also say, I think the second album is great. I think the album Vacation is great. I know they dismiss it. It'll feel like they could have used more time making it, but it's got some good gems in there, even beyond just the title track.
I think all three of them are packed with gems. The first one is almost perfect. The second and third are damn close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, our final note is go listen to the Go-Go's.
Yeah, get out there.
Just make your life better.
For sure.
Our listeners know they can follow us at RockAllPod on Twitter and Instagram. RockAllPod@gmail.com is the email. If you want Kristen to see that, designate that somewhere in your message. Otherwise, I'm not going to forward it to her. She doesn't want to read it. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us 5 stars only, even if you think we're a solid 4. Give us 5, because really that's the only meaningful way to do that. Thank you to Mike Lloyd for the logo. Thank you to Yusu Kim for the music. Thank you to Pantheon Podcast for hosting us. I'm Joe Quazala.
I'm Kristen Studdard.
And who cares
about the Rock Hall?